Hello, this video will demonstrate how to fill out the project budget for both a systems change and participatory action research grant type. If after watching this video you're still facing difficulty completing the task, then we have these different support options here that you can take advantage of. The first step is to log into the online grant management system, and you get to this page because you've either marked it previously, or because you've clicked on the Apply Now button from any of the granting pages on the vancouverfoundation.ca website. So I'm going to go ahead and log in. And because I haven't yet submitted an application form, I'm taken to the list of open program calls. Once I submit an application, and the next time I log in, I'll be taken to a different screen called the home screen. To get to my applications, I click on my applications menu item, and then I look for my draft applications here. Any applications I've submitted will appear here. So to demonstrate the budget, I'm going to use a couple of different grant types to show you the difference, the slight difference between participatory action research and systems change budgets. So let's start with a convene grant. That's a research project type. And so I'm going to enter on the project budget tab, I'm going to enter the project budget. And you can, this is a floating window, so if you're working off of two screens, you can move it over to another screen, or you can expand it to the full screen size. The project budget template itself is made up of a revenue and an expenditure area. In the revenue section, we ask how much you're asking to Vancouver Foundation, how much you and your partners are contributing in cash, how much you and your partners are contributing in kind, and what your requests to other external funders are. There's a handy summary table at the bottom of this section that automatically calculates and recalculates as you add more information in. And then in the expenditure section, we ask for a list of the project and administrative expenses, as well as the participation and community engagement expenses. This is for a couple reasons. One is for develop and convene grant types, it's up to $10,000 for project and administration expenses, and up to another $10,000 for participation and community engagement expenses. In addition to that, we also like to we'd like to be able to do some analysis to see how community uses the funds from Vancouver Foundation, the types of activities that seem to be the hardest to find funding for elsewhere. Like the revenue section, the expenditure section has a summary section that automatically calculates. To enter, I'm going to go back up into revenue. To enter lines in the budget, you just keep adding rows and removing rows if you want to. You simply type in text and numbers. You can grab and move into, if you wanted to move this down onto the second line and add a different amount up, a different line item up here. The one thing that you'll need to understand is that for every line you add, before you can save, and you can save in progress at any time, but if you haven't filled anything out in the name, description, or any of the numerical fields, you'll get an error message that says, hey, please enter something, and it'll take you right to that field. And if you try to save again, it takes you right to the field. So all of these need to be filled out. And there needs to be a number entered in each of the numerical fields, even if that number is 0. the contact name and phone and email fields can be left blank. The other thing before you can save in progress is you need to put a amount requested to Vancouver Foundation, and to get started, you can to get started on the budget template, you can certainly enter 0. When you save, if the revenue and expenditure section doesn't equal, or if your requested amount to Vancouver Foundation and the amount allocated against expenses doesn't equal, you'll get this message, but you can still save in progress. And the screen will refresh. It will take you back to the top of the page and you can continue along. The one difference between research and systems change budgets is in the expenditure section. The research budget template has this justification field that is common in research budget proposals, and by grabbing onto this corner here, you can expand the section out to write as much as you need to help the volunteer reviewers understand what's behind this expense. So now I'm going to close this off, and I'm going to go back up to another project application that I have, let's see, that is in progress. You'll see for this one, I've already selected 2 years. And once you enter into the budget and save, the summary of what you've put in the table appears in the application form. And this is a really handy way if you're entering your project in progress and you're leaving and coming back, just to see where you are. So we can see here that so far I've entered just over 94,000 in revenue and 175,000 in expenses in year 1, 100,000 in year 2, but 192,000 here. So I've got a lot more expenses entered into my chart than I have revenue for. And I haven't asked anything from Vancouver Foundation up here, but I have allocated $10,000 worth of expenses. So I've got some work to do here. So let's go in. I'm going to expand to full screen to make it easier. I'm going to leave Vancouver Foundation at zeros for just a minute, and I'm going to refer to my cheat sheet here. So in this section, here's the applicant, the intermediary, and another organization they're partnering with on this two-year project. And so in terms of cash contributions, the applicant organization is going to fundraise to raise $5,000 each year for this project. That totals $10,000. And because it hasn't been raised yet, nothing's been confirmed. The contact for this revenue line might be the development director at the applicant organization. And here you can see you can enter phone numbers and email addresses in a variety of formats. Here I've used titles. You might want to use names in case we need to call and chat. So the intermediary organization, this project has an event happening in year 2, so that the intermediary organization is leading, and so $5,000 from that organization, from the event registration fees, is a cash contribution. It hasn't been confirmed yet either. The partnering organization has $1,000 budgeted as a cash contribution, and that has been confirmed already. And if we wanted to phone and confirm that, it would be the CEO here that we would talk to. In terms of the in-kind contributions, these are contributions of program expenses that you can list on your financial statements as well. So things here we have The applicant organization is an in-kind contribution is half of the manager's salary and benefits, some administrative support. The intermediary organization as an outreach coordinator working 3 days a week, that's going to be, these are existing positions and these are going to be in-kind contributions. And the partnering organization is donating or supplying meeting rooms as well as a van to provide some transportation for the participants. So here is the year 1 and year 2 values of these in-kind contributions. We assume that, here's what they total. We assume that because these are in-kind contributions, that they have been confirmed. I'm a terrible typer, which is why I've pre-filled this form out. So you'll see, here's the in-kind contributions. The amounts have all been confirmed. Here's who at the organization we would talk to if we wanted to discuss it. And then requests to other funders. Oh, sorry, there's one more in-kind contribution I want to add. And this is from a corporate sponsor. They're donating cell phones and tablets. The hard and operating costs of these is $5,000 in the first year, and then it's just operating costs in the second year. This contribution has been confirmed by their sponsorship. And is the number to call. And as I've been adding those figures in, this table has been changing. So I now see that my total revenue is up to $211,000. Here's how much total confirmed there is. Excuse me. I've yet to put in a request to Vancouver Foundation. So I can save in progress. I get the message saying things aren't quite balanced yet. That's okay. It's going to refresh the screen. Take me back up to the top, and I can continue on working on my budget. So down in the expenses, so I've listed some of the project administrative expenses already. Remember, the salaries were some of the in-kind contributions that were listed under revenue. So here's that part-time program manager, a half-time program manager that the applicant organization has. Here's a new position that's needed. The applicant organization needs a project administrator, new full-time salaries and benefits. Here's the anticipated cost of that. And here's how much they're going to ask Vancouver Foundation for. 100% of that salary. For test scale and investigate grants, we fund up to 50% of the total project budget, but we can fund up to 100% of any one expense line in a project budget. And so if you need us to cover 100% of any of these expense lines, then please ask us for that. The next line is that outreach coordinator that the intermediary organization has. As part of this project, we'd like to increase that position from 3 days a week up to 5 days a week. And so the difference in the 2 days a week that makes sense that the request for us for 2 out of the 5 days would equal 40%. The other in-kind expenses that was listed was the corporate sponsor, the cell phone and tablets. So anything that you've listed as in kind up here should be reflected in the expense budget down here somehow. And so you'll see that the year one and year two costs are equal to the in-kind, sorry, I'm just checking my cheat sheet, equal to the entire sponsorship, in-kind sponsorship. So there's no request to Vancouver Foundation here. And there was some administrative support as an in-kind contribution, $5,000 a year, but the total administration cost of the project over those 2 years is higher. And so part of the request will be to Vancouver Foundation to cover the difference in the administrative costs. If I move down to participation expenses, you'll see that each of the there's an expense type for each of the rows. We haven't put these in to try to constrain how you form a budget. If we haven't listed an appropriate category for you, just select others. And then put the description in for us. So I've pre-filled most of this out, including request to Vancouver Foundation, the bursaries and stipends for the youth stipends. Here we want to ask Vancouver Foundation for half of that. The screen's going to take a minute to refresh because I want to save in progress. If I make a change, and I'm hesitant to make a change, but let's do a change. So I've entered all of my revenues and expenses, and I can see that, actually let me just go back to the application form. I can see that I've still got a difference in the revenue and expenses in years 1 and year 2. That's because I haven't entered anything from Vancouver Foundation. So I'm going to go back in. Now you'll notice I haven't saved. If I go to close without making changes, I'll get this error message that asks me if I want to leave without saving. If I do want to save, I hit cancel and go back. So let me do that. And now my revenue says the total revenue is $367,800, and 156 of that is coming from Vancouver Foundation, and the total expenses are $367,800, and 156 of that is coming to Vancouver Foundation. So my revenues and expenses equal, so I won't get that error message again. However, if I've asked for too much, let's see what happens. The total requested from Vancouver Foundation is required and cannot exceed the total. It'll take me right to where I've made the error, and here I've said there's only $1,000 of expenses, but I'm asking $2,000 of it from Vancouver Foundation, so that doesn't work. So let me up this one to $5,000, and now I'm going to save, and the error message I get says that the revenue requested from Vancouver Foundation doesn't equal the amount of expenses allocated to Vancouver Foundation. And I'm off by $1,000. So if I go back and correct that and save, now I don't get any error messages. And it'll take a couple minutes to refresh. I can close this, and now I see that the total project revenue equals the total project expenses. The total amount requested to Vancouver Foundation equals in the revenue and expenses. And you get a sense of how much of the request allocated to Vancouver Foundation there is. So that's it for completing a project budget. I would recommend that you, even though you can save and process, I think it's probably a little easier to do up your budget first in some sort of spreadsheet program and then transfer the numbers and descriptions into the budget template as you work along. It can be a bit finicky. There's a lot of validation built into the template to help make certain that things balance, but that also means you get a lot of error messages. You can potentially get a lot of error messages when you're trying to save and either a cell doesn't have a figure in it like the template wants it to, or if things haven't quite balanced out yet and you're saving in progress. I hope you found this informative. If you're still experiencing some difficulties, then please contact us using one of the methods that we've listed on the login screen. We are here to help you submit an application successfully, and I look forward to reading your project proposal. Thanks very much again for watching.